Okay, welcome everyone to the socioeconomics module. We're really excited to talk to you about what we've learned. Today, I'll be going over how socioeconomic status is socially constructed and in what ways. Emily is going to go over how welfare is constructed, and James will go over nutrition and how that all affects our socioeconomic status. From the first reading, Measuring Socioeconomic Status, we are informed about how socioeconomic status has changed over 3 different eras. The first is the pre-modern era. Status was classified by physical strength, intelligence, and choice of parents. And choice of parents could mean a couple different things. It could mean the availability of your parents to teach you the things they know about socioeconomic status, but it could also mean whether you have parents or not and how that limits your station in life. Next is the modern era. And this is where it changed from innate skills to more business-like descriptions. Socioeconomic status was focused on an accumulation of wealth, income, educational attainment, and occupational prestige. These past kind of eras make sense in our minds, right? We can picture first the survival of the fittest, and now in the themes of older movies, we see how much education was rare and how having a good occupation was a golden ticket to life and success. I like to think of It's a Wonderful Life, if you guys know that movie. George, the main character, desperately wants to travel to obtain exposure before having to settle and have that income and accumulation of wealth for his family in town because that was what was considered respectful in socioeconomic terms. Then we get to the post-industrial era, which the author was not clear about the indicators of socioeconomic status. This is where I'm going to take a gander on what I think makes it up today, and you can think critically with me and see if you agree. I'm proposing that socioeconomic status is viewed from the point of possessions as opposed to supposed unseen wealth or intelligence. Today, I'll be discussing how possession of certain clothing affects how people treat you because of your supposed status. I'll be focusing on one particular article from theladder.com posted in 2021 called Study Finds Strangers, Know Your Social Class in Milliseconds Based on Clothing Alone. The summary of the study is that participants were shown 50 headshots. 25 featured individuals wearing richer upper body clothing, and 25 featured subjects wearing poorer clothing. The participants were then asked to rate each individual's competence on a 9-point scale. In order to specifically pull from gut feelings, they were only given about 1 second to decide. And if you think the answers should have been easy, think again. The pictures were made to ensure that the differences between the looks of rich and poor were mild. So mild that the words rich and poor were only used once up against more than 4,000 other adjectives used to describe the individual's competence. I found a few things that were interesting about this study. First, participants were directed to ignore the clothing and even offered a monetary value to omit it from their analyses. Still, clothing dramatically influenced perception of competence. This was seen by the authors of the study when they noted the same face when seen with richer clothes was judged significantly more competent than with poorer clothes. And that's the same face. These same results were found across 9 other studies, which found that it didn't matter what kind of upper body clothing was used, as long as the quality was visibly distinguishable. So, in our professor's words, so what? Here's a couple of things we need to think about going forward. First, judgment of status doesn't have to be limited to just clothing like we talked about, but can extend to all possessions or appearance of possessions. Fancy nails, cool cars, big houses, and even the types of food someone eats are all presumed to be indicators of high status in this post-industrial era. Unfortunately, status through possessions can be assumed to have equal weight against intelligence or competence. And this is a problem because it doesn't give everyone an equal chance to be seen as capable. Another point we need to think about is comparison. Social construction of socioeconomic status would have us believe that our value is placed within our status or contribution to the appearance of society when that's just not true. I want to leave my part with you with two questions to ponder. Are you judging those around you unfairly? And where are you placing your worth and the worth of others compared to you and your status? Later on, you'll be viewing a social experiment where people will be treated differently based on how they look because people assume their status. I want you to especially ponder these questions as you view it and think of ideas on how we can combat the social construction of socioeconomic status.
Socioeconomics likes to divide into classes of income and status, and just like Emma showed us with clothing, uh, social constructionism theory is a tool that can expose the root and remove these gaps and disparities. And what I would like to point out is that as far as socioeconomic status goes, there are no gaps in the end, other than one, and that is for children at primary and early secondary socialization, according to social constructionism theory. And the way I can do that with the help of uh, social constructionism is by what I call neutralizers in the food chain. And just some of the big ones that are obvious are vessels at sea. Things go wrong all the time with handling and cross contamination and temperature control. And the outcome of that is not by class. It just happens to the food that we all eat. It's not discriminate. And in land transport, the same thing happens with cross contamination with refrigeration, refrigerated vessels that haul temperature controlled food items from fresh meat to produce. And there's the regulation that's in play, or was when I've seen it, to prevent cross contamination by using the same vessels for all these different food items is not enforced. And there's small agriculture, and I wanted to mention large agriculture. And oh, just for a moment, in case everyone needs to take clean their camera lens off and be able to see the same things I'm taking you to see, please see the optional video to neutralize your critical thinking zones for a minute and look at the neutralizers that make us all the same status in the end, if not for primary socialization. The large agriculture, one of the biggest companies in the world, 155,000 employees in several different countries around the world in all the different languages, and then consider all the chemicals involved in making this food, from fertilizers to compounds, and all the different languages that these chemicals are in. And the interpretation or translation accuracy is going to suffer. And this affects everybody's food, not just by division of class. And then to show you or to demonstrate that on a large scale, there was the Flint water fiasco that contaminated everybody's water, and that wasn't discrimination by class. The biggest takeaway, I think, is for socioeconomics to level the playing field and remove status indifference would be the greatest trick ever played on human species is plant oil. And this is uh, everybody gets tricked by this. Plant oil bypasses satiety and by not having practical or usable nutrients. And plant oil is the reason that big food stays in business by profit. And it's probably the worst thing that we can be putting into our bodies. Please take a moment and research plant oil thoroughly. Everybody heard of the 20-year-old McDonald's hamburger that a person found in their pocket that didn't change a bit and looked edible? That's because of preservatives. Think about that for a minute. Preservatives, they get us all. it's really hard to go out of our way to avoid preservatives, even when we try. And preservatives, I've only learned that we've been told that are bad for us, but the reason is they prevent us from digesting not only the food that they're used on, but any other food that we ingested adjacent with the food that has a preservative. Read our ingredients, and then what we've amounted to is violence. Now we're fighting for nutrients that aren't even there at the place where they're not to be found anyway in fast food. One last place I want you to look is at bottom feeder fish. Bottom feeder fish are necessary to keep our waterways clean, and if you look at the species, they're all fish that we eat. We shouldn't be eating the fish that are janitorials, heroes for our waterways of keeping them clean. And I left you a link in an article. Just by looking at these constructs differently, we're all the same except for primary socialization. That's where disparity in socioeconomics lies. Any argument beyond that is irrelevant because we're all in this together. Thank you.
Welfare and kind of some of the stereotypes that come along with that. So you may have heard of programs like WIC, SNAP, or the Utah PEBT cards. These are systems that help people in poverty get food. So SNAP is for children most of the time. WIC is for women, specifically pregnant women, infants, and children. And these PEBT cards, the ones that you see there, were distributed during COVID to help families who were relying on school meals to feed their kids. And so they could use those cards to buy their kids some meals during quarantine. So some of the stereotypes that come along with welfare are, people on welfare are people of color. They're living in ghettos or trailer homes or on the streets. Maybe they are drug addicts, or they're just playing the system to get more money, those types of things. And I have been guilty of thinking stuff like that myself, actually. But I actually got on welfare a few years ago. I'll kind of go over my situation with you and tell you my story. So I came home from my mission at 21, met my husband and his 2 kids. We got married at 23. We had our kids full time, so we were a cute little family of 4. Nate and I just kind of had dead-end jobs working food and custodial work. I got pregnant, and when I got pregnant, I quit working full-time, just moved to part-time, and I started focusing on my education. However, because I wasn't working full-time anymore, I did not have any insurance. And so we applied for Medicaid. We also applied for WIC, and we applied for reduced school lunches. Still, even though I was on welfare, when I thought of other people on welfare, I thought, these people are probably, people of color, living in the ghetto, some lady fighting a drug addiction with like rotating boyfriends, that sort of thing. Very judgmental of me, I know. It wasn't until I read the reading assignment that I really changed my mind. So, according to the reading, only 36% of welfare participants are African American. People on welfare are primarily white. And people on welfare are mostly mothers and kids. So that describes me perfectly. I am white mother with kids. I also noticed that a lot of the people in the reading were mothers trying to get an education so that they could get a full-time job in the future to better support their family. Also me. So this is a huge bit of text, so I will summarize it for you. But this is coming from a mother that was interviewed about her welfare experience, and she talks about how being on welfare is almost like a trap, because as soon as you start making money, they take welfare away from you and you lose your insurance. You still can't afford, paying for rent, groceries, insurance, a car. if you start working and you're not making enough money, you're actually penalized for trying to be productive. Even if she has opportunities to work, she can't take them at that moment. She just can't make that jump because she just can't afford to lose insurance, which is something that I totally understand. A year or two ago, my kids had tons of cavities, and we paid tons of money to fix their teeth. When I was pregnant, I was facing a $20,000 bill, $20,000 bill to pay for my pregnancy and the hospital stay and everything. And if I hadn't been on welfare, I don't know if I could have come up with that money myself. So it does pay to be poor. I am fortunate enough to enjoy a lot of blessings. I have parents, I have in-laws, I have a husband who's very supportive, and I have somewhere that I can stay that's rent-free. And so because I have all these assets and I'm going to school, when I graduate, I have a great job lined up. I'll be making a decent amount of money and I'll be able to get off the welfare program. But not a lot of people have all of the benefits that I have. Many people are single, are away from their parents. Maybe their living situation is a bit dangerous, or they just can't afford to pay rent all the time. And so for those people, getting out of welfare is really hard, because as soon as you get out of the welfare program, you're making just enough money to be booted out, but you're not making enough money to support yourself yet. And so they get sucked back into welfare and feel trapped there, because if they work, they lose everything that they need. And so they need to be able to make a pretty big jump from poverty to like upper middle class in order to pay for all these things. And a lot of these people have kids. They can't just like get a job paying them $50,000 a year, because that's not enough to pay for all the expenses that come along with having a family. Just one last kind of stereotype that comes along with some of the welfare programs. I know one from my personal experience is that people on welfare are getting just junk food. They'll go to the grocery store and use their food stamps or whatever they have to buy like pizza, candy, soda, beer, whatever. So this picture is a picture from the WIC website. This shows you what WIC will allow you to get from their benefits. As you can see, there isn't any beer on here or candy. It's just eggs, produce, dairy, and some whole grains and juices. They really do encourage you. They kind of force you to buy healthy food if you use their programs. People aren't going out and just like spending all their welfare on Skittles. Most cases people are not. And so reading the papers for me was very enlightening. I hope it was enlightening for you guys too. I hope you enjoyed and learned from our presentation, and hope you enjoy the rest of the semester. Bye.